law librarians. So I'm going to talk about the different kinds of law librarians that you can be. And I realize not everybody in this class is interested in being a law librarian or even a librarian, but I think it's kind of important to know sort of the context and the place that most people are operating out of and most using these kind of resources. So there's a lot of different librarian roles. The traditional role is basically ordering the library materials and gatekeeping, so trying to keep the budget down, and selection, and dealing with vendors and processing and training and dealing with training and scheduling training. So those are some of the things. And on the right-hand side, I have sort of the different kinds of acquisitions that you have. You have serials. And if you're new to librarianship or library school, serials are another way of saying like journals or subscription documents. So anything that you subscribe to that's going to come out serially. So it's not just a monograph that you buy one time. And most law materials are serials because they are sets that are updated. So you sort of need an update because the law is always changing. So you have large sets of books, and those include primary law, which is the actual law. We'll talk more about this later, but the cases, the opinions, and then also the statutes, and those are primary law. So you have large sets of those. And then you have another thing, which is really secondary, and those are called finding aids. And those are digests and indexes and encyclopedias, and those are sort of ways of locating the primary sources and also explaining the primary sources. And a lot of what librarians do are update or manage the updates. So in a print collection, you have a lot of different kinds of ways of updating something, and we'll talk about that later. But that is one of the things that librarians manage. Sometimes they have what's called filing services that come in and do that for them. Then you have monographs, and that's treatises and horn books and sort of single, they don't have to be single volume, but single work on a particular subject. And those get updated less frequently, so sometimes they're just purchased straight out and not as a serial. And nowadays, and I really don't know how long, this is my whole career, these were in effect, they're library maintenance agreements, and they're kind of the law version of the big bundle. So they are package deals where you get just sort of, you can't negotiate all the elements of the package, but you get a better price if you buy the package, but usually it is multi-year. So it's a way of managing inflation, which was one of the reasons they were attractive. And I don't know really where law firms are at with this, and I don't know that they're actually used in, I don't know if that's just a law firm thing or if it's an academic or a public law thing, law library thing. So if you work at a public law library or an academic law library, maybe you can weigh in on that if you know about that. And then a lot is current awareness. So you have periodicals that route, and when everything went electronic, it became a little bit more expensive because you couldn't just like get one print copy and route it through the firm. You actually have to pay for the subscriptions. But you do somewhat have to manage the routing, though for the most part that's handled by the vendor themselves. Then you have what's called desk books, and the desk book budget can get out of hand, and those are the books that each attorney wants to have sort of in their paws, and these are typically print, and they typically use them when they're writing, and also when they're doing research, and also when they go to court. So there are certain types of books that tend to be desk books, but it varies by discipline, by practice area. But it can be a very large budget. Typically those books are very expensive because there's a lot that goes into writing them and they need to be updated. So the more traditional roles of the librarian are collection development. So that is the library jargon for buying things and selecting things. So you do have to do a lot of evaluation of resources, and that's why we're having to do book reviews, because that kind of gets that piece of it. And you do compare products. So you'll say, here's a database that does this one thing, and here's a competing database. Tell me which one is better. And then you do training. So you do the training on the electronic resources. Sometimes vendors do that, but you kind of have to manage the vendors. And then you do research and reference, which is really, this class is really about that research and reference part. There's another course that Barbara Bentliff teaches that's called Law Librarianship, and it really deals with all the rest of that. But I just want to show the context, and you can get reference and questions from anyway, face to face. You get I guess nowadays it'd be over Zoom, or an email or a phone call, or some have chat too. And then in public libraries you get like prison mail. So emerging roles, and this is I'm interested in this because I see that we're evolving, and so you may actually know more about some of these things than I do. But there's a big interest in business development, and getting new businesses. I mean, new work. Hey. Oh, okay. So rainmaking, so finding work for the firm, and there's a lot of vendors that do this, and a lot of databases and things. I'm thinking of like, it's really kind of it bleeds into competitive intelligence. I think there's a business competitive intelligence course that, or series of courses at the high school. That's this kind of stuff. And one thing I really liked was conflicts, so managing conflicts. When you have a new client come in, you have to make sure that that matter and that client don't conflict with, or that potential client don't conflict with your existing clients. And that's very interesting kind of work. And you can deal with that with different databases, so you sort of look up information about the potential client. And scholarly communications, I put this in because it's not a law firm thing, it's an academic thing, but I don't see a lot. I pitched a course in copyright to the high school, and I think that they are going to add it, but someone else is going to teach it. But the next time I'm going to pitch the ScholComm course, because that's sort of, it's like a new thing that people who have an interest in law and librarianship can get into, and there's some overlap. And so that involves the publishing cycle. So you have open educational resources, data management, repositories, and copyright, which is what I do now.